What would you do if you were starving and the only thing standing between you and survival was a single choice? A choice between taking a life or saving it. This is the story of a young girl who lost everything: her family, her home, her village's love. Left alone to die, she faced that impossible choice in the depths of the forest, and what she decided in that moment would change not just her fate, but the destiny of an entire village. They say the spirits still whisper her name in the wind. They say her kindness awakened an ancient magic, but before there was magic, there was only a hungry, desperate child and a decision that would echo through generations. This is the tale of Ifeoma, the orphan who should have died, but chose to live differently. But before we begin this journey together, if you love African folktales and the wisdom of our elders, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss a story. And as we walk through this tale together, if it touches your heart, show your support by giving this video a thumbs up. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions help us keep these precious stories alive for the next generation. Now, sit tight. In the time when the baobab trees were young and the rivers sang their own songs, when the spirits still walked openly among mortals and the veil between worlds was thin as morning mist, there lived a girl named Ifeoma in a small village nestled between the great forest and the endless grasslands. Her name meant a good thing, and her mother had chosen it carefully, for Ifeoma was born under the full moon on the night when the first rains came after a long drought. The elders said she carried the light of that moon in her heart and the blessing of the rains in her spirit. Her eyes were bright like the morning star, and her laughter once rang through the village like the sound of bells. Ifeoma's father was a skilled hunter named Chakwu, known throughout the land for his wisdom and fair dealings. Her mother, Adana, was a weaver whose cloth was so beautiful that traders came from distant kingdoms to purchase her work. Her grandmother, Mama Nneka, was the keeper of stories, the one who remembered all the old ways and taught the children the songs of their ancestors. But joy, like the rainy season, does not last forever. When Ifeoma was only 7 harvests old, a terrible sickness swept through the village like wind through dry grass. It came without warning, arriving with a merchant caravan from the east. First came the fever, then the terrible cough that sounded like drums of death, then the deep sleep from which many never woke. The sickness took Ifeoma's mother first. Adana, who had been weaving a special cloth for Ifeoma's coming-of-age ceremony, died with her loom unfinished, her hands still reaching for the threads. Ifeoma held her mother's hand as she took her last breath, feeling the warmth slowly leave her fingers. 3 days later, her father followed. Chakwu had barely recovered from his grief over his wife when the sickness claimed him too. With his last words, he made Mama Nneka promise to care for their daughter. "She is special," he whispered. "The spirits have marked her for something great. Protect her." Mama Nneka kept her promise. For 2 more years, she raised Ifeoma, teaching her the old stories, the songs of healing, the names of all the herbs and trees. She taught her granddaughter that every living thing has a spirit, that kindness is the truest magic, and that those who suffer most deeply can love most fully. But when Ifeoma reached her 9th year, the sickness returned. This time it took Mama Nneka, along with many others. The old woman died in Ifeoma's arms, her final words a blessing: "Remember, my child, you are a good thing. No matter what comes, remain good." Ifeoma was left alone in the world, with nothing but the small clay pot her mother had used for cooking, a worn cloth that still held her grandmother's scent, and the unfinished weaving from her mother's loom. At first, the villagers showed sympathy. Mama Nkeche, who had been friends with Ifeoma's mother, brought her food for 3 days. Uncle Obi, her father's hunting companion, promised to look after her, but as the days turned to weeks and weeks to months, their visits became fewer. Their promises faded like footprints in the dust. The truth was that the village was struggling. The sickness had taken so many that each family could barely feed themselves. And there were whispers, terrible, poisonous whispers, that spread through the compound like smoke. "Have you noticed?" Old woman Yugo hissed to her neighbors. "The child survived when so many perished. 3 times death visited her family, and 3 times it left her standing. It is unnatural." Perhaps she carries bad medicine, another added. Perhaps she is the reason the sickness came. My husband says we should not anger the spirits by helping her, Mama Enkeche finally confessed to the others, her voice heavy with shame. What if misfortune follows her like a shadow? One by one, the villagers turned their faces away when Ifeoma passed. Doors that had once been open to her were quietly closed. Children who had been her playmates were called inside when she approached. Even Uncle Obi avoided her eyes at the market, pretending not to see her. Only old Mama Koku, the village healer who was too ancient to fear death, would leave scraps of food outside her door, bones with a bit of meat still clinging to them, half-rotten yams, the heel of a loaf of bread that even the dogs wouldn't eat. Ifeoma's hut, once full of life and love, became a place of shadows. At night, she would wrap herself in her grandmother's cloth and finish eating the meager scraps, then cry herself to sleep, calling out for her mother, her father, her grandmother, but only silence answered. She tried to remember her grandmother's lessons, tried to remain a good thing, but hunger is a cruel teacher. It makes your belly hurt, your head spin, your limbs weak. It makes you think thoughts you never imagined you could think. One morning, when hunger gnawed at Ifeoma's belly like a wild animal, and she felt so weak she could barely stand, she decided to venture deep into the forest to search for wild yams and berries. The other children were not allowed to go into the forest alone. Their mothers warned them of leopards and spirits, and getting lost in the tangled paths. But Ifeoma had no mother to warn her, and she reasoned that death from a leopard's jaws might be quicker and kinder than slow starvation. She walked for a long time, following a path she remembered her father taking when he went hunting. The forest was different from the village. Here, everything was alive and watching. She could feel eyes upon her, though she saw nothing. Birds called out in languages she didn't understand. The trees whispered secrets to each other in the wind. She found a few bitter berries and ate them quickly, barely tasting them. She dug with her bare hands beneath a large tree, hopping for yams, but found only stones and roots too tough to eat. Her fingers were bleeding, her dress torn, her hope fading. Then she heard it, a soft cry, desperate and afraid. Ifeoma followed the sound and found, trapped beneath a fallen branch thick as a man's waist, a baby antelope. It was the most beautiful creature she had ever seen, golden brown with white spots like stars scattered across its back. But its hind leg was caught beneath the branch, bleeding and twisted at an unnatural angle. The creature's eyes were wide with terror and pain. Ifeoma's first thought, the one that came unbidden and sharp as a knife, was practical meat. That antelope, even small as it was, would feed her for many days. She could smoke the meat, make it last. She could survive. She had seen her father kill animals before. She knew where to strike to make death quick. The creature was already injured. It would be a mercy, really, and she was so hungry, so terribly, achingly hungry. Ifeoma picked up a sharp stone. The antelope looked at her with those liquid brown eyes and made a small sound, not quite a bleat, but something softer, more trusting. In that moment, Ifeoma saw herself reflected in those frightened eyes. She saw the loneliness, the pain, the desperate hope for mercy from a world that had shown none. She remembered her grandmother's words, "Every living thing has a spirit. Kindness is the truest magic." The stone fell from her hand. "I won't hurt you," Ifeoma whispered, kneeling beside the antelope. "I know what it is to be trapped and afraid." She examined the branch. It was far too heavy for a girl her size to lift alone, but Ifeoma was determined. She found a strong stick and used it as a lever, just as she had seen her father do once. She pushed with all her might, her thin arms trembling, sweat pouring down her face despite the forest's coolness. The branch moved a little, then a little more. "Come on," she grunted, pushing harder. "Come on." With a final desperate heave, she lifted the branch just enough. The antelope scrambled free, then collapsed, unable to stand on its injured leg. Ifeoma tore a strip from her grandmother's precious cloth, the only thing she had left of her family, and gently wrapped the antelope's leg, whispering soothing words as her grandmother had once done for her when she'd fallen and scraped her knee. "Shh, little one, I know it hurts, but you'll be all right, you'll be all right." She gathered leaves and made a poultice the way Mama Nneka had taught her, applying it to the wound. The antelope lay still, no longer struggling, seeming to understand that this strange human child meant no harm. When Ifeoma was done, the antelope tried to stand. It wobbled on 3 legs, then turned to look at her. It approached slowly and licked her hand once, twice, 3 times. Its tongue was rough and warm, and Ifeoma felt tears spring to her eyes. It had been so long since anyone had touched her with affection. Then the antelope limped away into the thick bush, disappearing like a dream. Ifeoma sat there for a long time, looking at her empty, bleeding hands. She had saved a life, but she had also given up what might have been her own salvation. She had nothing to show for her journey into the forest, but a few bitter berries were already eaten, and now even her grandmother's cloth was smaller, diminished. The walk back to the village seemed longer than before. Each step was an effort. By the time she reached her hut, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that reminded her of her mother's finest weavings. That night was the hardest of Ifeoma's life. She lay shivering in her hut, her stomach so empty it had stopped hurting and simply felt hollow, as if she were disappearing from the inside out. She could hear the sounds of the village, families laughing together over evening meals, mothers calling their children inside, the drum circle gathering for the night's entertainment. She was so close to life, yet so far from it. As the moon rose, full and bright, just as it had been on the night of her birth, Ifeoma closed her eyes and prayed to her ancestors. "Mama, Papa, Grandmother," she whispered, "I tried to remain good as you taught me. I tried to be the good thing my name says I am. But I am so tired, so hungry, so alone. If you can hear me, if you are watching, please help me, or let me come and be with you. I cannot bear this much longer." A breeze stirred in her hut, though no windows were open. The air shimmered and danced, and Ifeoma heard a voice like rustling leaves, like wind through grass, like water over stones. "Child of the moon, daughter of the rains, Ifeoma, who is called a good thing." Ifeoma opened her eyes and gasped. Before her stood a woman like none she had ever seen. She was made of moonlight and shadow, with eyes like the deepest forest pools and skin that shimmered like tree bark kissed by rain. Her hair was adorned with flowers that bloomed and faded and bloomed again. Her presence filled the small hut with a wild, ancient power that made Ifeoma's skin tingle. Who are you?" Ifeoma whispered, trembling. "I am she who has many names," the spirit said, her voice ancient and young all at once. "Some call me the mother of the forest, others know me as the guardian of growing things. I am the breath of the trees and the heartbeat of the earth. All creatures that walk, crawl, swim, and fly in the wild places are my children." Understanding dawned on Ifeoma, the antelope. "My beloved child, yes," the spirit smiled, and it was like watching flowers bloom. "I have watched you, Ifeoma. I watched as sorrow visited your house 3 times, and 3 times you remained standing. I watched as your village turned their backs on you, and still you did not let bitterness poison your heart. Today, when you were weakest, when hunger and desperation could have excused any cruelty, you chose kindness. You saved my child when you could barely save yourself." The spirit moved closer, and Ifeoma could smell earth after rain, wild honey, green growing things. "Your heart remained soft when it could have turned to stone. Your hands remained gentle when they could have brought death. You chose love when the world showed you nothing but abandonment." Tears streamed down Ifeoma's face. "I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't. I looked in its eyes and I saw myself." "Exactly," the spirit said softly. "You saw yourself in another's suffering and responded with compassion. This is the rarest magic, child. This is the power that changes worlds." The spirit reached out and touched the clay pot that had been Ifeoma's mother's, the pot that now sat empty and dusty in the corner. As her fingers brushed it, the pot began to glow with a soft golden light. "This pot will never be empty," the spirit said. "Each morning, it will be filled with enough food to feed many. But you must promise me this, Ifeoma. You will share its abundance with all who hunger, even those who turn their backs on you, even those who whispered cruel words and spread poisonous rumors, even those who let a child starve while they ate well. Can you promise me this?" Ifeoma thought of Mama Nkeche, who had stopped bringing food. She thought of Uncle Obi, who had broken his promise. She thought of old woman Hugo and her venomous whispers. Part of her, the part that had been hurt and abandoned, wanted to keep the food for herself, to let them see what it felt like to be excluded and alone. But she remembered her grandmother's words, "Those who suffer most deeply can love most fully." "I promise," Ifeoma said, and she meant it with her whole heart. The spirit smiled again, and this time her smile was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. "You are indeed a good thing, Ifeoma. The name your mother gave you was prophecy." She reached into the folds of her garment and pulled out seeds that glowed like stars. "Plant these around your home. They will grow into a garden that knows no seasons, that will feed you and yours forever. But remember, what you give away returns to you tenfold. What you hoard withers and dies." The spirit began to fade, becoming translucent as mist. "One more gift I give you, child. You will never be alone again. Help will come to you in forms you do not expect. Trust in kindness, for it is a seed that grows in the darkest soil." And then she was gone, leaving only the scent of wild places and the echo of her voice. When morning came, Ifeoma woke to find the pot filled to the brim with warm groundnut stew, rich with meat and vegetables. The smell alone made her dizzy with hunger. She ate quickly, greedily, tears of relief running down her face. She ate until her shrunken belly was full for the first time in many moons. But she remembered her promise. Ifeoma carried the pot to the village center, to the great meeting tree where the elders gathered. Her hands shook with nervousness, but she planted her feet and called out in a voice stronger than she felt, "Come, all who are hungry, come and eat." At first no one came. People peered from doorways, suspicious. They whispered to each other, "What trick is this? Where did she get food? Perhaps it is cursed." Then slowly the children emerged. Children are always braver than their elders, and their bellies are more honest. Little Adiz came first, her eyes wide and hopeful. Then Chisholm and Emeka, hand in hand. Soon a whole crowd of children surrounded Ifeoma. "Is it really free?" Adiz asked. "Can we really eat?" "Yes," Ifeoma said, smiling despite her nervousness. "All who hunger may eat." She served the children first, watching their faces light up with joy. And no matter how many bowls she filled, the pot remained full, just as the spirit had promised. The mothers came next, drawn by their children's laughter. They approached with shame written on their faces, unable to meet Ifeoma's eyes. Mama Nkechi came last, her head bowed low. "I do not deserve your kindness," she whispered. "I abandoned you when you needed help most. I let fear make me cruel." Ifeoma looked at this woman who had been her mother's friend, who had failed her when she most needed help. She felt the hurt rise in her throat like bile. But then she remembered the antelope's trusting eyes, the spirit's words about soft hearts. "We all deserve kindness," Ifeoma said quietly, filling a bowl for Mama Nkechi. "That is what my grandmother taught me. We all deserve kindness, especially when we have made mistakes." Mama Nkechi took the bowl with shaking hands and wept. Day after day, Ifeoma fed the village. Each morning the pot was full, and each evening it was empty. She planted the spirit's seeds around her hut, and within days they sprouted into plants that grew impossibly fast: yams and cassava, vegetables and fruit trees, herbs and grain. Her small plot became a garden of abundance. And slowly, mysteriously, other changes began. The rains came on time that season, gentle and steady. The crops that the villagers had feared would fail grew tall and strong. Sickness did not return. The hunting was good, the fishing better. The village began to thrive in ways it had not for years. The elders gathered beneath the great tree and discussed this change in fortune. "It began when the child started feeding us," one observed. "Perhaps we have been laboring under a curse of our own making. We abandoned one of our own, and the spirits were displeased." "Or perhaps," said the oldest elder, Mazi Okafor, "kindness invites kindness, and cruelty invites cruelty. We showed that girl none of our humanity, and so the spirits withdrew theirs from us. Now she shows us mercy we do not deserve, and abundance returns." Shame fell upon the village like a heavy cloth. One by one, people came to Ifeoma not just for food, but to apologize. Uncle Obi came with tears in his eyes, carrying gifts he had made with his own hands: a new sleeping mat, carved bowls, a warm blanket. "Your father was my brother in all but blood," he said. "I failed him, I failed you. I have no excuse but my own weakness and fear. Can you forgive me?" Ifeoma had every right to refuse, to nurse her wounds, to make them suffer as she had suffered. But her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "Those who suffer most deeply can love most fully." "There is nothing to forgive, uncle," she said, and she meant it. "We all carry fear, we all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them." The people who had once turned their backs on Ifeoma now called her daughter, sister, niece. They helped her expand her garden. They built additions to her hut, making it larger and stronger. Young women came to learn from her, asking how she made her food taste so good, how her garden grew so well. But Ifeoma never forgot what it felt like to be alone, to be hungry, to be abandoned by those who should have cared. She made her expanding compound a home for all the forgotten ones. When old Mama Koku, the only one who had shown her any kindness, grew too frail to care for herself, Ifeoma brought her to live in her compound, giving her the finest room and the softest bed. She cared for the old woman with tenderness, bathing her, feeding her, and listening to her stories of the old days. When a young woman named Onyeka was caught with child out of wedlock and cast out by her family, Ifeoma took her in. "You will raise your child here," she said firmly. "No child will be born into shame in my house." When the rains failed in a neighboring village and refugees came seeking food, Ifeoma fed them all, and many stayed, building new homes in the expanding compound. Orphans found their way to her door as if drawn by invisible threads. First came little Kache, whose parents had died in a farming accident, then the twins Amadi and Adama, left on the road by an uncle who could not afford to feed them. Then Ngozi, Olachi, Ebuka, one by one they came, and one by one Ifeoma took them in. "Why do you do this?" Mama Nkechi asked one day, watching as Ifeoma patiently taught a group of children how to plant seeds. "You have your own struggles. Why take on the burdens of so many others?" Ifeoma looked at the children, laughing, playing, learning, loving, and smiled. "Because I remember, Auntie. I remember what it feels like to be alone. I remember hunger that makes your bones ache. I remember lying awake at night wondering if anyone in the world cares whether you live or die. I cannot forget that, and I would not if I could. My pain taught me compassion. My loneliness taught me the value of community. My suffering gave me the strength to ease the suffering of others." Years passed like water flowing in a river. Ifeoma grew from a child into a young woman, then into a woman in her prime. Her compound became known far and wide as a place of refuge and healing. Travelers spoke of the woman who turned no one away, whose pots were never empty, whose garden grew year-round. The magic pot, having fulfilled its purpose of teaching the village about generosity, eventually returned to ordinary clay. But by then, Ifeoma had taught the village, and herself, something far more precious than magic. That abundance comes not from what we hoard, but from what we share. That survival is not about filling only your own belly, but about ensuring no one eats alone. She married a kind man named Ikena, a trader who admired her generous heart. Together, they had children of their own, who grew up alongside the children Ifeoma had adopted, making no distinction between blood relations and chosen family. When Ifeoma finally became an ancestor herself, her hair silver as the moon that had watched over her birth, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren too numerous to count, the village gathered to honor her. They planted a baobab tree in the center of her compound, the same spot where the magic pot had once sat. As they planted it, an antelope emerged from the forest, golden brown with white spots like stars, moving with a slight limp in its hind leg. It approached the gathering fearlessly, touched its nose to the young tree, then looked at Ifeoma with eyes that held ancient wisdom before disappearing back into the wild. "The spirit keeps her promises," Ifeoma whispered, smiling. "That tree still stands today, they say, its branches spread wide like welcoming arms, offering shade to all who need rest. Birds nest in its heights, and beneath its roots, the earth is always fertile. The village that once turned its back on a hungry child became known throughout the land as a place of compassion and plenty. And on nights when the moon is full, they say you can still see her, the spirit of the forest, walking among the trees, checking on her children, both human and animal. And if you listen carefully, you can hear her singing a song about a girl named Ifeoma who chose kindness when the world offered only cruelty, and in doing so, changed the hearts of all who knew her. The elders teach their children this story by every fire, reminding them, when you have nothing, give kindness. When you have plenty, give more. For what you give away is the only thing you truly keep forever. This is the lesson of Ifeoma, the orphan who fed a village and became a mother to thousands. And so the story lives on, passed from grandmother to grandchild, from elder to youth, a reminder that the smallest act of compassion can change the world, and that survival is sweetest when we survive together.